considered himself Jewish, and he was bar mitzvahed. His mother used to take care of laundry, and Willie would deliver it. And he delivered it when he was a kid to a home where there was a rabbi who sang what is called a chazan. I once said to Mingus, that's Jewish blues. That Willie was very entranced by that. And he later did become bar mitzvah. And what I didn't know, he became a chazan in a black Jewish synagogue in Harlem. I wish I'd known that. I would have hoped to join the congregation. So there are no strict lines, to say the least.
Well, Hampton had a star baby that he wore when he was a Jewish people. He had a cross when he was working with Christian people.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I have a question, two quick questions, one for George and one for Matt. The one for George is, this year, your Care Fusion Festival, which I thought was fantastic here in New York. But it was very different from the JVCs in the past, and, in many ways more modest and focusing on clubs. Was your experience, were you inspired by the results of that?
I was absolutely happy and ecstatic about it because what I did was I created a family of not just the musicians, but of the people presenting the music. And whether it was the nightclub owners in Brooklyn, or whether it was the Schomburg Center, or whether it was the Jazz Gallery, which I feel is a very important thing, whatever it was, and whatever the situation was. I remember I had a party at my house for everybody. It was just a few drinks and a couple of hors d'oeuvres. And I had Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and Bob's in the same party. And they had never met, they never knew each other. All of a sudden they're talking about jazz and talking about what it means and what it meant. And I was very, very happy about that. Because what I was doing, which made me happy because I had the money from my sponsor, not only was I subsidizing musicians, I was subsidizing those clubs because they could pay the musicians, they could keep the income that they got. And boy, that's a good feeling when you do that. And I feel we had a very wide spread of music, and from the Louis Armstrong house, where we had a tribute to Louis and had a garden party in the garden, to what was happening at the Jazz Gallery, what was going on there, all over the city. I loved it, and I particularly, he was talking about people that play a lot of notes. I never heard anybody play more notes than Romy on the piano. But she's fantastic. She is not just, she is going to be, she's going to grow, and she's great. Now, she does play a lot of notes.
So did Art Tatum, right? You got Art Tatum and Count Basie opposites, and they both amazing.
And Matt, a question for you. Before I even moved to New York and started reading your columns, when I was a kid, the way I primarily knew your writing was through your liner notes on various albums. Have you ever found yourself changing your mind about any of the people you wrote your liner notes about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Have I ever found out I changed my mind about liner notes? You write liner notes not to criticize somebody. Well, first of all, when I'm asked to do liner notes, I always say you got to send me the record first, and I turn down liner notes. But I have changed my mind. Maybe on liner notes, I haven't confessed to that yet to myself, but I have changed my mind because of when I listen. Because of something Charlie Parker said there. I was interviewing him, and he said, I heard a Bartok concerto, and I couldn't stand it. It did nothing for me. But then a few months later, he said, I heard the same thing, and I got so entranced by it, I decided to write something, a jazz kind of concerto. So So I learned then, never write or criticize or do anything like that, only the first time you hear something. And that's given me a number of surprises and saved me a lot of embarrassment, I hope.
We're sort of running out of time. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Anybody? Yes. Microphone up the back.
Tom? I was wondering if either of you have seen Lester Young live and what that was like, or interviewed him.
I got to know Lester quite well, and I interviewed him for a long afternoon at his home in Queens, and I asked him in the course of the interview about, I had heard that he wouldn't play a ballad unless he knew the lyrics. He said, yeah, that's true. So I said, well, how do you pick up the lyrics? He pointed to a stack of records next to him. They were all by Frank Sinatra. He told me another story. He said, when I was just beginning in this, there was one musician that really influenced me, because he always told the story when he played. And he was speaking of a side man with Big Spiderback. What was the name of that cat?
Frank Trombauer.
Yeah. And then, as I was leaving that day, and here I was talking with the epitome of hitness in jazz as it was, or in the society as a whole. We're going out the door, and Lester said, by the way, do you like Dixieland? I said, yeah, when it's good. He said, so do I. And another thing I found out about Lester, going beyond jazz, I write a lot about education, and I found out that every time Prez was home from the road, he would show up at the school where his boy was going, just to check out how the kid was doing. The boy later became a high official in the New York school system. Just an interesting bypass.
George, you worked with Lester a great deal. What are your remembrances?
I have to read my book about my adventure. I mean, that was something in my life, because he came to the club in Boston, and the conversation went on. You're going to be my piano player, Chris? I want to play piano. And like, he wouldn't get on the stage. I had to play 4 choruses of Pennies from Heaven before he would get on the stage. And we had a ball for a week. And the greatest compliment he ever played to me had nothing to do with saying anything to me. While we're playing and swinging, he says, we have to get Lady Grants to record our little quintet. That was the greatest compliment he ever paid.
Okay, maybe one more, or we're going to sort of... Oh, here's something.
Hi, from what I understand, amazingly, the great Duke Ellington and his band fell out of favor during the 1950s until that magical July night in 1956 at George's festival. Can you tell us about that?
Tell you about that night?
Yeah.
All I know is I was telling Duke get off the stage, and he wouldn't get off the stage.
I was actually there that night. Dominion Wendell and I had played with Chico Hamilton before that, and it was Paul Gonzalez solo. That just mesmerizing. It was really magic, and people were standing. I was standing on the chair, applauding, and it was remarkable night. The Dominican band played after that. It just brought everybody together. I think mainly, the thing I feel most is that we have to stop describing each other as separate from one another, gender-wise and all the other nonsense. We got to just be humans, I think, that's the whole. But that was a great night.
The thing I remember about that night was that after the fact, I remember this, that, of course, Gonzalez played 27 choruses, and the record sold more than anything that Duke had sold in years. And what happened is all the tenor players haven't taken the saxophone out of their mouth since.
Okay, on that, I think that we're going to have all these guys up here. They can sign Matt's book, and Armand Hirsch and the two Jakes are coming back, and we'll be playing quietly in the background. And I thank you so much. And I thank Matt Hent4 and Jim Hall and George Wiener. Thank all of you.
Stick around and get your book signed and listen to more jazz.
Thank you.